Okay, and I want to focus on that on that description first before we go into the details. A lot of folks have asked us over the course of the last 24, 48 hours, with Republicans in charge of the House and the Senate and the White House, why do we need a bipartisan spending bill? And one of the things I think is not being discussed as openly as it should is that this is one of those bills that requires 60 votes in the Senate. So it's not like the health care bill. We have to have at least 8 Democrats support this in the Senate, which is why we've been working with Democrats from the very beginning. Yes, we could have passed a Republican bill only out of the House, but it never would have passed out of the Senate, and then we would have been accused of not being able to function and run the government. So there's a very good reason that we're working with Democrats on a bipartisan bill, and that is because we must. And until those rules change, that's the environment that we're going to continue to operate in. The Dems have been trying to claim victory on this, which I think is a very strange way to look at a bipartisan discussion. If you're in a bipartisan meeting, I think it's very unusual for one group to walk out and start spiking the football and say, hey, we won, we killed the other guys, and it certainly doesn't bode very well for future discussions. But since the Democrats have raised the issue and tried to cast this as Democrat victory, I think it's important today and only fair to show you what's really in the bill and how the president actually cut a tremendous deal for the American people. At the end of the day, that's who we think won in this discussion, in this negotiation, not the Democrats, not the Republicans, but the American people. First, the list of things that Republicans got in the negotiation. You've heard a bunch of different numbers about the top line defense number. I've heard as low as 10 or 12.5 billion dollars. The number is 21 billion. Okay, that is what the additional defense spending is, $21 billion. That's made up of 2 numbers, $15 billion in a standalone OCO, Overseas Contingency Operation account, and another $6 billion that is hardwired into the underlying DOD approps bill. Remember, this is an omnibus bill, which means it's made up of different appropriations bills. One of those bills that becomes part of the omnibus is the defense appropriations bill, and in that bill is $6 billion worth of OCO spending. So you take the 6 that's in the underlying bill, the 15 that was added as the supplemental, and that's how you arrive at the $21 billion. The $12.5 billion number is wrong. The $15 billion number is wrong. You could talk about a number as high as $25 billion if you wanted to compare it to FY 2016. But you could never go below $21 billion in that analysis, which is a full 2/3 of what we'd asked for in the beginning. I'm going to talk a little bit more later on about the DHS number, the $1.522 billion of additional spending, by the way. That's not all of the spending on border security. The total DHS number by the time we're finished will be north of $42 billion. Okay, the largest funding levels for border security in the last 10 years is what we'll have at the end of this process. That's where this negotiation has taken us, to the largest spending on border security in 10 years. We'll go over the details of that in a second. Miners' health, one of my favorites. So the Democrats walked out of the room and said they protected the miners' health. Okay, so did the president. The president is asking me since the day I got here for a way to fix the miners' health issue problems that they have in Appalachia. And we were simply waiting for the opportunity to give it as part of a bipartisan discussion so that we could get something in return. We mark this as one of our victories in this particular bill. Every single Second Amendment protection that we wanted and the Democrats wanted to get rid of is still in the bill. Every single pro-life protection that we wanted to keep in the bill and the Democrats wanted out is gone. Okay? And most importantly, and those of you in this room and the folks who take the time to watch this during the day, understand this and follow this business fairly closely. We broke parity. Okay? And for those of you who've been covering this area for a long time know what that means. It means in the past several years, ever since the spending caps came on, ever since the sequester went in, there was this unwritten deal on Capitol Hill, which is for every dollar of defense spending that the Republicans wanted, they had to give $1 worth of non-defense spending to the Democrats. That was the deal that President Obama was able to cut during his last years in office. We got $21 billion of new defense spending for less than $5 billion of non-defense spending. Okay? We didn't go dollar for dollar. We got $1 of spending and only gave 20 cents worth of non-defense discretionary. That's a tremendous development for this president and a huge win from a negotiating standpoint. Okay? Think about that for a second. We've gone from $1 to a dollar for just 20 cents. And plus, part of that $4.5 billion is stuff that we like. So the miners' health is included in that number. So even some of the stuff that we gave away, supposedly, to get the defense spending was stuff that we liked in the first place. What didn't the Democrats get? There's no Obamacare bailout money in this package. I've read that in the newspapers a couple different times. I've seen it on the news. Go find it for me. It is not there. What the Democrats are telling you about that is false. There's absolutely no language in this bill that requires us to make any Obamacare bailout payments, any CSR payments of any way, shape, or form as a result of this deal. Okay? Why are the Democrats saying that? Because it's what they told their base they would deliver, and they failed to do that for their base. That is not in the bill. There's no new money for Puerto Rico. You hear the Democrats crying out that they got $295 million for Puerto Rico. Not a penny of it is new money. Okay? All of that money was already spent. It was actually part of Obamacare under a previous agreement. That money was sitting there unspent, and all we agreed to do was agree to let them move it from one place to another. Did not cost the taxpayer a penny. They wanted new money. They wanted a bailout. We wouldn't give it to them. We gave them money that was already appropriated and already spent. There's no renewable energy subsidies. They wanted, at the last minute, they threw in a demand for renewable energy subsidies for wind and solar and other types of things. We kept those out. What they really didn't get is this, and this is what they wanted. They wanted a shutdown. We know that. They were desperate to make this administration look like we couldn't function, like we couldn't govern. And we know that a large part of their base, especially their left-wing base, wanted a shutdown and certainly didn't want them to cut a deal with us. That's why I think you're seeing them crowing about their success, is in order to cover up the fact that they actually cut a deal with President Trump, and President Trump did a tremendous job. What are we talking about? More money for spending, more money for defense, more money for border security, more money for school choice, another thing that we got, okay? Those of you who were here in March and saw me introduce our first version of our budget blueprint saw me talk about the president's priorities. What were they? Defense, border security, school choice. The president delivered on his promises and got his priorities funded, and that's what the Democrats don't want you to know. They want you to think they won. What they don't want you to know is the American people won here because the president simply out-negotiated them. I want to come back to one thing, then I'll take some questions. If I can bring the pictures up now, that would be great. You've heard me talk a lot over the course of the last couple of weeks. I've been on television a couple times saying, oh, there's no bricks and mortar, there's no bricks and mortar, and there's no bricks and mortar for a wall in this. We can build this, okay? And we're going to build this. There are several hundreds of millions of dollars for us to replace cyclone fencing with 20-foot high steel wall. There's several hundreds of millions of dollars in the bill for us. Can we bring up the other photo, please? If we have the other photo. There's several hundreds of millions of dollars for us to build levee walls along the southern border. And as many of you know who follow this issue, some of the most vulnerable areas that we have are places along rivers where we desperately need levees in order to provide the protection of the southern border that we need. Okay? We are building this now. There is money in this deal to build several hundreds of millions of dollars of this to replace this. That's what we got in this deal, and that's what the Democrats don't want you to know. This stuff is going up now. Why? Because the president wants to make the country more safe. This doesn't stop drugs and doesn't stop criminals from crossing the border. In fact, it doesn't stop hardly anything from crossing the border. This does. And that's what we got in this deal, and that's why we're so excited about the opportunities that we have to follow through on the president's promises to secure the southern border. So, unless we have the other picture, I'll take a couple questions.
Border, how do you say that fence will keep drugs from coming over the border? They tunnel underneath the border, 75.
This is the border, the general left. This is the wall, by the way, that DHS said they want. I've sat in the Oval Office of the president. We've talked about bricks and mortar. We've talked about concrete walls. This is what DHS wants. Why? Because it actually works better. You can tunnel under anything. I will answer your question, okay? You can see through this one, okay? It's actually safer. Where we have this in place now, and we do, it's actually safer for our Border Patrol agents. You can talk to the DHS about the details, but there's been a dramatic reduction in attacks on our Border Patrol agents where they can see through the wall because nobody's throwing anything over the top at them. This is what DHS wanted. It's also half of the cost, so we can build twice as much of it. This is a huge win for border security.
Nick, the president, as you know, tweeted out this morning that looking ahead to fiscal year 18,